Welcome to this journey into one of the most unsettling stories that Edinburgh, Scotland has ever held in its silence. Before we begin, comment where you're watching from, because the places we're about to visit hide more than just mist and tree lines. They hide secrets that have waited over a century to be remembered. This story is a work of fiction, created purely for entertainment. Any resemblance to real people, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. Now, let us begin. Detective Samuel Rowan had worked enough late nights to know when a shift felt wrong, when the air seemed heavier, when shadows seemed to cling instead. A fall, when the silence inside the Edinburgh City Police office pressed against the walls like something trying to get in. Tonight was one of those nights. He sat alone at his desk, the dim yellow glow of the overhead light flickering just enough to irritate him. The bulbs had been replaced too many times, but the building was older than most of the officers working inside attend. The wiring never cooperated. Rowan exhaled slowly, rubbing the exhaustion from his eyes. It was nearly 2 a.m. The rest of the night staff were scattered across the station, an officer asleep in the break room, another out on patrol, a dispatcher humming to herself down the hall. It was quiet, unnaturally quiet. Rowan looked down at the cold case file open on his desk. The faded photographs stared back at him, a teenage girl with soft, dark hair, eyes too bright to belong in a police report, and a smile that had endured only in photographs. Emily Harrow. Missing, October 1979. Body found 2 days later near St. Margaret's Cemetery, strangled. No suspects, no arrests. He closed the folder gently. He had been a rookie when her case was taught in training, one of the most haunting unsolved murders in the city's history. He reached for his coffee, took a sip, and grimaced. Cold, bitter. Typical. He was about to rise to refill it when ring. Ring? Rowan froze. It wasn't his desk phone. It wasn't the hallway line. It wasn't the dispatch room. It was coming from the far corner, from the dusty, disconnected, analog emergency phone mounted on the wall. The phone that had been out of service for nearly 30 years. The one no one touched. The one no one ever should hear ring. But it kept ringing. Rowan stood slowly. Every instinct in his body told him not to answer, but he walked toward it anyway. As if drawn by something deeper, something he hadn't felt since the first time he held a badge. He reached out. His hand hovered over the receiver. The ringing stopped. Rowan's pulse hammered in his throat. He swallowed, hesitated, then lifted. The receiver, anyway? ... Hello? For a moment there was nothing, just a faint hiss of static, like someone breathing through sand. Then a sound emerged, soft, shaking. A girl's voice. "Help me." Rowan's heart skipped. "Who is this?" The voice came again, fragile and trembling. "I didn't want to die." He felt cold spread through his chest. "Miss, stay calm. Tell me your name." A long, painful silence. Then, ... Emily. He closed his eyes. No. Impossible. He steadied his voice. "Emily who? Emily Harrow?" The line crackled. A breath. Almost a sob. "Yes." Rowan stepped back, nearly dropping the phone. His fingers trembled against the receiver. "This isn't funny," he whispered. "Whoever you are, this is a sick joke," she made me answer. The girl whispered. Rowan's breath hitched. "Who?" There was a rasping inhale, like air passing through cold, damp soil. The woman in the fog. A shiver climbed Rowan's spine, freezing him in place. He swallowed hard. "Emily, where are you calling from?" A faint, wet sound answered first, like shifting earth, or someone moving inside a narrow wooden box. "I'm cold." Emily, listen to me. "Tell me where you are." "Still here? Where?" Rowan pushed, voice rising. Static swallowed her words. Then, through the crackling distortion, "I never left." The line went dead. Rowan stood there, unmoving, the receiver pressed to his ear long after the silence took over. His mind raced, but his body felt numb. Finally, he lowered the phone. He lifted it again, no dial tone. No electricity. Nothing. Footsteps echoed behind him. "Detective." He turned sharply. Officer Myers entered the room carrying a stack of reports. He stopped when he saw Rowan's expression. "You all right? You look pale." Rowan forced his voice steady. "Did you hear the phone ring?" Myers followed his gaze to the old device. "That," he laughed. "It's not even connected. Wiring's been dead since the 80s. Rowan didn't answer. Myers dropped the reports onto a nearby desk. "If you need a break, take one. You look like you've seen a ghost." He chuckled and left. Rowan didn't move for a long time. His thoughts swirled like the cold fog creeping outside the station windows. "She made me answer. The woman in the fog. I never left." He forced himself back to his desk, but his hand shook as he opened Emily Harrow's file again. He stared at her picture, her smile frozen in time. If this was a prank, it was cruel. If it wasn't, then something was terribly wrong. He glanced at the clock. 2:17 a.m. He stood, grabbed his coat, flashlight, and notebook, and headed for the exit. If the dead girl had truly spoken, if she was truly still here, then there was only one place to start looking: St. Margaret's Cemetery. Outside, the night was still, and the fog was already rolling in, thick and low, curling around gravestones and lampposts like pale fingers. Rowan stepped into it, and the city seemed to hold its breath. "If you want, I'll now create." Detective Samuel Rowan stepped out into the chill of the early morning Edinburgh air, the door of the police station closing behind him with a hollow thud that echoed across the empty street. The fog hung low, thicker than usual, unnaturally dense, swallowing the glow of the street lamps until they looked like faint, dying stars. He pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders as he crossed to his car. Everything felt wrong. The call, the voice, the name. Emily Harrow had been dead for 40 years. Yet Rowan could still hear her whispering through the static, "I never left." He shoved the memory aside long enough to start the engine. The car headlights cut weakly through the fog as he eased into the road, tires hissing quietly over damp asphalt. The route to St. Margaret's Cemetery wasn't long, but tonight it felt like a journey into something older and colder than the city itself. Rowan kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone sitting in the back seat. He saw nothing, only the fog, chasing him like a living thing. When he finally reached the cemetery gates, he parked and stepped out slowly, shining his flashlight across the rusted iron bars. The gates loomed in front of him, their intricate swirls and curves blackened with age, their hinges stiff with years of neglect. Rowan pushed them open. Bait ground a long, metallic note that felt too loud, too alive. Cutting through the thick silence, inside, St. Margaret's Cemetery stretched out like a forgotten city. Rows of weathered headstones leaned at uncomfortable angles. Tall, crooked trees clawed their bare branches at the sky. Fog drifted between graves like pale smoke, curling around stone angels and fading flowers. Rowan's breath appeared in front of him, a thin cloud of vapor that quickly dissolved into the night. He began walking. Each step felt heavier, colder, more deliberate. As he moved deeper into the cemetery, the fog grew thicker, so dense it brushed against his coat like cold fingers. The flashlight beam struggled, flickering as though something unseen pressed on it. Rowan swallowed and kept moving. He knew exactly where he was going. Emily Harrow's grave. He'd studied the site years ago. He knew the layout of this cemetery better than he wanted to admit. He turned down a narrow path, lined with broken slabs of stone and wilted grass. The silence around him felt absolute. No owls, no wind, no far-off hum of the city. Just the soft whisper of his own footsteps. He stopped. A shape emerged through the fog ahead, tall, dark, unmoving. For a moment, He felt his chest seized. Then the shape resolved. A statue? An old stone angel? Wings cracked, face eroded almost smooth. It seemed to be watching him, its eyeless gaze following him even as he passed. Rowan exhaled shakily. "Get a hold of yourself," he muttered. It was then he noticed something strange. Footprints, small ones, bare, leading away from the angel statue and toward the far corner of the cemetery. He crouched, shining his light on them. Tiny impressions in the wet grass, light but distinct, as if someone, or something, had walked barefoot through the cold ground. Rowan felt a chill creep up his spine. Kids, vandals, a lost woman. The explanations flickered through his mind, but they didn't feel right, not with the fog, not with the voice on the phone. He followed the trail as he moved. He heard something, soft, barely audible, a whisper, no breathing. His heartbeat quickened. "Hello," he called out. "Is someone here?" No response. The footprints led him to a clearing, the oldest part of the cemetery, where the graves were close together and the ground sank unevenly. Fog curled tightly around everything, pooling low like something deliberately hiding the earth. Beneath it, Rowan took a step forward. That's when he saw it, Emily Harrow's headstone. He recognized it instantly. A simple granite marker, name engraved in delicate cursive. Emily Harrow, 1963 to 1979. Forever loved. There were fresh flowers at the base. Strange, because no one had visited this grave in years. Rowan crouched again, brushing his fingers along the petals. They were cold, wet, still living. Someone had left them within the last 12 hours. He felt unease pool in his stomach, then dash behind him a sound. Not loud, not sharp, just close. Rowan spun around, flashlight cutting through the fog. "Who's there?" His voice echoed across the empty cemetery. No answer, but he felt it, a presence. Someone or something watching him from the mist. He steadied himself and turned back to Emily's grave. Something glimmered at the base of the stone. He leaned down and picked it up, a small silver locket. He flipped it open. Inside was a faded photograph of Emily, the same one from the cold case file. Except the edges of the photo looked wet, smudged, as if recently touched by damp fingers. His pulse quickened. A whisper slid through the fog behind him. "Sam?" Rowan froze. No one called him Sam. Not anymore. He turned slowly, flashlight trembling in his hand. "Emily," Hida whispered. The fog shifted, swirling, pulling back, and Rowan saw something. A figure, small, barefoot, hair hanging long and dripping wet, like she had climbed out of the earth itself. Her head tilted. Her face was obscured by her hair, but her lips moved, forming his name. Rowan stumbled backward, breath caught in his throat. "Stop," he said, voice shaking. "Don't come closer." The figure didn't move. The fog curled around her legs, and then in the faintest whisper, "She made me answer." Rowan felt ice crawl through every vein. "Who?" he demanded. "Who made you?" The girl lifted her hand, one finger pointing into the fog behind him. Rowan turned and saw nothing. When he whipped back around, the girl was gone. The fog swallowed her completely. Rowan stood alone in the cemetery, heart pounding, breath unsteady. The locket felt heavy. In his hand, too heavy. He backed away slowly, unable to take his eyes off the fog. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And whatever had made Emily answer, it was still here. Watching Detective Samuel Rowan's breath curled in front of him as he backed away from the empty clearing. His flashlight beam trembled across the gravestones, each one leaning like silent witnesses. The fog pressed in around him, thick and damp, muffling sound and swallowing his footsteps. Emily Harrow, her voice on the phone. her figure in the fog. The locket now cold in his hand, nothing about this night made sense. But one truth pulsed through Rowan's mind. Someone or something was manipulating the dead. He forced himself to breathe, to steady his thoughts. He had been scared before, shocked, even shaken, but this felt different, as if the air itself had memory, as if the earth beneath the graves was listening. He turned the locket over in his hand, shining the flashlight on its back. There, scratched faintly into the metal, was a mark, a symbol, a circle, split through the center by a vertical line, 3 small lines branching off each side like ribs. Rowan frowned. He had seen that symbol before. But where? He slipped the locket into his pocket and spun slowly, scanning the fog. Nothing. No movement. No whisper. The figure of girl Emily had vanished as quickly as she appeared, leaving behind only the sense that she hadn't been alone. Rowan walked back toward the cemetery gates, adrenaline still pulsing through him. But halfway there, he stopped again. Footprints, not the small, barefoot ones he had followed earlier. These were larger, boot prints, deep in the wet earth, leading toward the older mausoleums on the eastern slope. Someone living had been here tonight. He followed the tracks cautiously, sweeping his light across the overgrown path. The fog thinned slightly as he approached the mausoleum stone structures. Built in the 1800s, long abandoned and rarely visited. One door stood partly open. Rowan's stomach tightened. He approached slowly, pushing the door with one hand. The heavy stone slab shifted with a grinding groan, revealing a dark interior, colder than the air outside. His flashlight illuminated cracked walls, fallen debris, and the remnants of old family plaques. But something new caught his eye. Fresh footprints on the dusty floor, and something drawn on the far wall. Rowan stepped inside carefully, boots echoing softly in the hollow chamber. The air smelled of earth, old stone, and something else. Something metallic. He raised the flashlight. The symbol from the locket, huge, painted in what looked disturbingly like dark, dried blood. A circle, split down the center, lines branching like ribs. Rowan exhaled shakily. Someone had marked this mausoleum deliberately. He took out his notebook, quickly sketching the symbol, though the image burned into his mind already. He reached up to touch the wall. A sound froze. Him? A single, deliberate footstep behind him. Rowan spun, flashlight piercing the darkness. Nothing, only swirling fog creeping through the open doorway. He stepped out quickly, scanning the area. His pulse thundered in his ears. The fog drifted low across the ground, curling around the bases of the mausoleums. Then, from somewhere deeper in the cemetery, a sound that did not belong anywhere near the living. A long, slow exhale, wet, labored almost. Inhuman, Rowan backed away, hand instinctively hovering near the holster at his side. He wanted to call for backup, but what would he say? I'm being followed by fog and a dead girl's voice. No, not yet. Not until he understood what he was dealing with. He forced himself to walk, step by step, back toward the clearing where Emily's grave lay. Even though every instinct screamed at him to leave, he had to know if there was something he missed. When he arrived, the clearing was unchanged. The grave stood silent. Flowers undisturbed. Fog thick as ever. But something caught his attention, just a faint glimmer beneath the petals. He knelt again. A thread, long, black, coarse hair, human hair. Rowan lifted it carefully. It was cold, damp, and too long to belong to Emily. Her hair had been shoulder length. This strand was nearly a foot long. He froze. The woman in the fog. Emily's whisper echoed in his mind, the static from the phone bleeding into the memory. She made me answer. Rowan stood quickly and glanced around. The fog pressed close, shifting slowly, almost as though it moved with intention. His radio crackled suddenly, startling him. Rowan, you out there? Officer Meyer's voice came through, muffled by static. Rowan pressed the button. Yeah, I'm at St. Margaret's. Why? It's nearly 3 in the morning. Everything all right? No, not even close. But Rowan forced his voice steady. Just checking something on a case. Static. Then you're not alone out there. Be careful. Rowan stiffened. Myers.
You mean I'm not?
The radio cut into static. Again. Then softly a voice he recognized far too well whispered through the speaker. Sam. Rowan dropped the radio. He backed away, breath sharp and shaking, scanning the fog with frantic eyes. Emily, he called. Where are you? Silence. Then a figure. Tall, feminine, distant but unmistakable, standing between the graves, partially veiled by fog. Not the girl from before. This figure was taller, older, hair long and black, spilling down her shoulders. She stood perfectly still. Watching him, Rowan clenched his jaw, every muscle tense. Who are you? The figure tilted her head slowly, unnaturally, as if studying. Rowan took a step back. The fog around her feet swirled upward, curling like smoke around her form. Then she raised an arm, pale, thin, unnaturally long, and pointed. Directly at him, Rowan stumbled back, heart pounding so violently he thought it might burst. Stay back, he whispered. The figure didn't move, but the fog behind her began to churn, darkening, swirling, rising in a way that was no longer natural. Rowan turned and ran down the path, through the gate, across the street, into his car. He slammed the door and locked it, breathing hard, staring into the rearview mirror. Nothing, only fog. It chased him all the way back to the station, but the worst part wasn't the figure. Oh, Emily's voice. It was what Rowan found when he finally emptied his pockets onto his desk. The locket, the sketch of the symbol, and the strand of black hair. On the hair, now visible in the bright station lights, were tiny grains of wet soil. Cemetery soil. Rowan sat slowly. He finally remembered where he'd seen the symbol. A case file. A forgotten murder. A woman found dead in 1901. Her body posed with that exact symbol carved above her. The report had called her the woman in the fog. Asterisk. Detective Samuel Rowan didn't sleep. Not for a second. He sat alone at his desk in the dimly lit corner of the Edinburgh station, the fluorescent lights flickering above him like nervous breaths. The world outside was still black, a few hours before dawn, but Rowan wouldn't have noticed even if the sun had risen. His focus was locked entirely on the old brown evidence box resting in front of him, a file no one had touched in decades. Yellowed. Tape brittle from age. A faded label barely legible. And the handwritten case name, Harrow -1901. His throat tightened. Emily Harrow, the girl in the fog. The voice on the phone. The grave he had visited hours ago. He remembered the long, black hair, the symbol on the mausoleum wall, the figure watching him. He took a steady breath and opened the box. Inside were papers, photos, and a cloth pouch that looked disturbingly like it had been stitched by hand a century ago. Its threads were frayed, blackened. The pouch bulged slightly, tied closed with a knot the color of dried blood. Rowan didn't touch it, not yet. He lifted the brittle top folder. It crackled as he opened it, releasing the smell of old paper and damp earths, the same smell he'd sensed in the mausoleum. At the top of the first page. Victim, Margaret Harrow, age 29. Cause of death, undetermined. Condition, severe trauma. Unnatural positioning. Harrow. His chest tightened at Emily Harrow. And now, Margaret Harrow. Same surname, same cemetery, same fog. He read on. The report, written in elegant but formal handwriting, described a cold November night in 1901. Margaret Harrow had been found dead at the edge of what was then farmland. That would eventually become the cemetery Rowan had just fled. Her body had been placed deliberately, almost ritualistically, with arms laid straight at her sides and eyes open. Above her body, carved into the wall of a nearby crypt, that same symbol, the circle, the spine, the ribs. Rowan muttered under his breath, "This isn't coincidence." Kept reading, witness statements, old maps, sketches. Then he found a page that made his skin crawl. Final note from investigator A. Kincaid. The victim's younger sister reported seeing a woman in the fog on the night of the murder. She claimed the fog spoke. Rowan sat back, chilled to the bone. A woman in the fog, speaking just like he had seen, just like Emily's whisper in the static. He flipped to the next page. There was a photograph. Tucked inside, a black and white image. Grainy, unsettling. Margaret Harrow, lying on the ground, her hair spread like dark ink, her face pale, eyes staring blankly upward. Rowan swallowed hard. Behind her body, barely visible in the fog captured by the old camera, stood a faint shape, a tall woman, long hair, head tilted at an unnatural angle. Rowan's heart thundered in his chest. He recognized her, the same figure he saw in the cemetery, the same one who pointed at him. He placed the photo down with trembling fingers. The next document was a folded newspaper, clipping edges crisped by time. The Harrow curse. Locals report strange fog following tragic death. Rowan almost laughed, sharp and humorless. Curse. That word belonged in folklore, not police files. And yet, everything happening felt older than logic. The clipping mentioned that Margaret Harrow had been seen the night before her death arguing with a man in town, a man who disappeared afterward and was never found. Rumors spread, superstitions grew, and villagers began claiming the Harrow sisters were involved in the old ways. Old beliefs tied to the fog, to the land, and to something called the Watcher in the Mist. Rowan frowned. The Watcher. He whispered, "Is that you?" The woman following Emily. He turned the next page, and his breath caught. This was a letter, handwritten, ink blurred, but still legible. It was from the surviving sister. To whoever finds this, I fear Margaret did not die by a human hand. There is something in the fog, something ancient. It watched us for months. It whispered her name, and now it whispers mine. I do not know how to stop it. But the symbol, it is not a mark of death. It is a mark of calling. Once it is made, the fog follows. Do not answer if it calls your name. It is not the voice you think. The letter ended abruptly. Rowan sat back, heart pounding, staring at the words. Do not answer if it calls your name. Emily had answered, and now he had heard her. He had followed her footsteps. He had picked up the locket. He had answered, too. He rubbed his hands together, trying to ground himself. The room felt colder now, unnaturally so, as if the fog from outside seeped through the walls. He forced himself to reach for the cloth pouch, the one item he had avoided. It was old. Too old. The stitching was uneven, almost frantic, like someone stitched it in fear. He loosened the knot and slowly tipped the contents onto the desk. Something small and metallic rolled out. Two things. The first was a rusted ring. Plain, heavy, with that same carved symbol on the inside of the band. The second was worse. A hairpin. Long, black, thin, with a single strand of hair still twisted around it. Rowan stared. He knew that hair. He held the same kind hours ago, outside Emily's grave, near the mausoleum. He whispered, "She isn't just following me. She's marking me." He lifted the ring to the light. It was cold, much colder than a piece of metal should ever be. As he studied it, Something thumped softly against the station window behind him. Rowan froze. Another thump, louder, like a hand pressing against the glass. He turned slowly. Fog, thick, gray, swirling fog pressed against the window as if it had a pulse, as if it breathed, and in the fog a shape. Asterisk tall, thin, head tilted. Watching him, the woman in the fog, Rowan stood, heart hammering violently. He backed away from the window as her pale face took shape behind the mist. Her lips didn't move, but he heard her voice anyway. Not from the window. Not from outside, from behind him. Sam. He spun around. The room was empty, but the fog thickened outside, and the last page of the file fluttered open on its own, revealing a final warning written by the long-dead investigator. Once marked, the fog will not release you. Do not follow the voices. Do not return to the cemetery. The Harrow dead are never alone. Rowan exhaled shakily, staring at the window as the fog figure leaned closer. He now understood one thing. This wasn't just a haunting, it was a pursuit, and it had only just begun. Detective Samuel Rowan didn't sleep. He couldn't. Emily Harrow's voice still clung to the deepest corners of his mind, soft, broken, and impossibly alive. When dawn finally crept across Edinburgh, the fog thinned, but never fully lifted. As though the night had left something behind, Rowan drove straight to the City Records building, a quiet stone structure tucked behind the university. Archivist Margaret Sloane greeted him with a frown that suggested she knew he wasn't here. For casual research. Cold case, again? She asked, pushing her glasses up her nose. Rowan nodded. Emily Harrow, I need everything you have. She raised an eyebrow. That name again. You do realize her file has been sealed twice. Once by the original investigators, and once by her mother. Rowan froze. Her mother requested it sealed. 2 months before she died, Margaret said softly. She walked into this building in a black coat, trembling like she'd seen the devil himself. Signed a confidentiality request, handed over a letter, and left. What letter? Margaret didn't answer. She disappeared into the back room and returned with a slim, dust-coated envelope. It was old, yellowed, brittle, the ink nearly faded to brown. She placed it gently on the table. For police use only. You're the highest-ranking investigator still connected to the Harrow files, so I suppose it's yours now. Rowan slipped on gloves. The envelope seal cracked like dried leaves. Inside was a single sheet of thin paper, the handwriting elegant but shaky, curling like branches caught in a storm. To whoever continues this investigation, I know you will think me mad, but I beg you, listen. My daughter did not die alone in the cemetery. She died because something took her. Something old. Something that watches from the fog when the moon is thin and the night is quiet. She told me its name. She whispered it to me in her final dream. The woman in the fog. Rowan's breath left him in a slow, cold exhale. She is not human, and she does not let go. If my Emily speaks to you, please, do not answer. The last line was written with a tremor so violent the pen had torn the paper. Margaret. Sloane stared silently as Rowan folded the letter. Detective, whoever you're dealing with, please don't bring it back here. Rowan left without a word. Outside, the sky was a dull gray, the kind that pressed low to the horizon like a warning. Rowan felt watched against the same prickling sensation he'd felt in the cemetery. The same cold that settled deep under his skin. He climbed into his car and opened his notebook, flipping to the page where he had scribbled Emily's last words. She made me answer. The woman in the fog. He added a new line. Emily's mother knew. As he wrote, something thudded against the rear window. Rowan jerked upright. Nothing. He exhaled, forcing himself calm. Get it together, he muttered. Lack of sleep? Stress? That was all. He started the engine and turned toward the Harrow family home, now abandoned. untouched since the mother's death in 1983. The drive was short, but each street felt emptier than the last. By the time he reached the outskirts, the fog had thickened again, hugging the old houses like a shroud. The Harrow house stood at the end of a narrow lane, surrounded by dead hedges and a rusted gate that creaked in the wind. Rowan pushed it open. The house was silent, windows boarded, ivy strangling the walls. The door hung crooked on one hinge, like something had clawed at it years ago. Inside, dust covered everything. The smell of damp wood and old memories filled the air. Rowan moved slowly, flashlight sweeping the dark corners. Children's drawings lined one wall. Emily's. Crayons faded, paper curling. One drawing caught Rowan's attention. A little girl standing in a cemetery. Fog surrounding her, and behind her a tall, thin woman with no face. The same image appeared again and again. Different days, different colors. Same woman. Rowan's stomach twisted. He stepped into the mother's bedroom. The air felt colder here. On the dresser sat a cracked picture frame, Emily and her mother, smiling in the summer sun. Beside it lay a journal. Rowan opened it carefully. She's back. I feel her outside Emily's window. She whispers to my daughter at night. Another entry. Emily sleepwalked into the fog again. She said the woman called her name. And another. I cannot fight her. She wants my child. The final page was smeared with water stains. If anyone finds this, do not let her speak. She takes the living through their ears. Something creaked behind Rowan. He spun. The hallway was empty, but the fog was inside the house. It seeped along the floorboards, thin tendrils curling upward like smoke. The temperature dropped sharply. Rowan's breath came out in white clouds. No, he whispered. Not here. A whisper drifted from the front room. Samuel. The voice was soft, female, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. Rowan backed away. Show yourself. The whisper grew nearer, circling him like a cold wind. You answered her, Samuel, and now you can never unhear us. The fog thickened into a shape. A silhouette. Tall, lean, head tilted unnaturally to the side. As if bones no longer mattered. Rowan stumbled back too fast and the floorboards gave way. He crashed onto the lower level, hitting the ground hard as dust exploded around him. His flashlight flickered and died. Upstairs, he heard slow, deliberate steps along the floor. Creak, creak, creak. Then, they stopped directly above him. The whisper slid down through the broken floor. You should not have come. Rowan scrambled too, his feet gasping, adrenaline burning through fear. He bolted toward the back door, shoving it open and stumbling into the wet grass dot behind him. The house groaned, breathing. The fog followed. Rowan ran for the car, slamming the door shut, locking it, fumbling for the keys with shaking hands. When he finally started the engine, he dared one glance at the house. A pale face watched from the upstairs window. Not Emily's. Something older. Something wrong. Rowan tore down the lane, heart pounding violently, breath ragged. The investigation was no longer just about Emily. It was about survival, and whatever lived in the fog had just marked him. Detective Samuel Rowan didn't stop the car until he was halfway across Edinburgh. Breathing hard, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. The fog behind him seemed to cling to the rearview mirror like a second shadow, refusing to leave his sight. It had followed him as far as it could before thinning into harmless wisps. But the presence inside, it lingered in the back of his skull. His phone buzzed. A text from Myers. Call me ASAP. Something came in about the Harrow case. Rowan didn't think. He turned the car around and sped toward the station, every muscle tight and aching. When he arrived, Myers was pacing in the hallway, holding a cardboard box sealed with police evidence tape. You're not gonna believe this, Myers said, eyes wide. Maitons found this shoved behind one of the old filing cabinets downstairs. No record of it. Has your cold case number on it? Rowan tore the tape open. Inside were 6 cassette tapes, each labeled by hand. Harrow. Interview minus 1979, tape 1 of 6, tape 2 of 6, tape 3 of 6, up to tape 6. Myers whistled softly. Looks like someone tried to hide them. Rowan stared down at the tapes. He'd read about early interviews with Emily's mother, but the official transcripts had always seemed strangely brief, incomplete as if someone had trimmed away the parts that didn't fit the narrative. Where's the old tape player? Rowan asked. Myers led him to the audio room, a small, windowless space filled with dusty equipment no one used anymore. Rowan inserted tape 1. A soft crackle of static filled the room. Then voices. Detective Malcolm Sharon, the original lead. Investigator. Rowan recognized his gruff tone immediately. Then, another voice. A woman's. Emily's mother. Rowan leaned closer as her trembling words began. She comes at night. Always at night. When the fog touches the windows. Shireen sounded impatient. You're referring to this woman in the fog again? She's not a woman, the mother whispered. Not anymore. Rowan froze. The voice continued. She waits by Emily's bed. She speaks without lips. My daughter hears her. Responds to her. It's like she's mesmerized. Shireen sighed. Mrs. Harrow, grief. She snapped. Grief doesn't leave footprints outside her window. Grief doesn't whisper my child's name. A loud bang echoed. On the tape, Mrs. Harrow slamming her fist on the table. Check the soil around our house. You'll see the prints. Too long. Too thin. Not human. Static swallowed her final words. Rowan sat frozen. In the house he'd visited earlier, he had stepped into disturbed soil around the windowsill. He'd thought it was just age. Animals. Whether. Now he wasn't so sure. He slid in tape 2. Emily's mother sounded worse, her voice hoarse. Exhausted. She marked Emily, she said. On the shoulder. Like a handprint. Only colder. Shireen scoffed. You're saying a ghost touched your daughter? You don't understand, she whispered. She takes children who answer her. She draws them into the fog, and they forget they belong to the living. Rowan felt his pulse quicken. She told Emily she could see her father again, Mrs. Harrow said through tears. That's how she lures them. With promises. Shireen said nothing. Mrs. Harrow continued. Detective, please. If she speaks to anyone else, if she ever calls, don't let them pick up. Rowan's breath stopped. The warning in the letter. The warning on the tapes. He had answered anyway. Rowan inserted tape 3. This one began with shouting. Shireen, why didn't you tell us this earlier? Mrs. Harrow, because you'd think I was mad. Shireen, you brought in a child psychiatrist, Mrs. Harrow. She quit after seeing Emily's drawings. Said something was wrong with her eyes, like she watched something move behind the child. A chair scraped then, soft and chilling. She asked me last night if she could go into the fog, Mrs. Harrow whispered. She said the woman called her sweetling. Rowan felt sick. She isn't dead, the mother whispered. Not fully. That's why you hear her voice. She's caught between. The tape clicked off abruptly. Myers swallowed. Detective. This is something else. Rowan didn't look at him. He reached for tape 4. This one was slow, almost entirely quiet. Mrs. Harrow sounded defeated. She took her, she whispered, barely audible. She came in the fog, and Emily walked outside as if asleep. Shireen breathed sharply. How do you know? I watched, she said. From the stairs. I saw the shape. Tall, thin, head bent like she had a broken neck. Rowan's skin crawled. She held my daughter's hand. the mother continued. And Emily followed her into the dark. I ran after them, but the fog swallowed them. A long, trembling inhale. When I found Emily's body, she wasn't cold yet, Mrs. Harrow said quietly. I think she tried to come back. Rowan's throat tightened. She whispered to me, the mother said. 3 words. A pause. She wants you. The tape ended. A loud bang echoed outside the audio room. Both men jumped. Myers opened the door, peered out. Probably Jenkins knocking something over. Rowan held up a hand. She? Another bang? Closer. This time Dotton, dragging, a long, slow scrape across the hallway tiles. Myers' face drained of color. What the hell? Rowan stood, moving toward the door. The lights in the hallway flickered, then went out. A soft whisper slid through the darkness. Samuel. Rowan froze. Myers whispered, Detective. Tell me that's a joke. The whisper came again, clearer this time. You shouldn't have listened. Myers stepped back, shaking. Someone's in the station. No, not someone, something, a shape moved in the darkness at the far end of the hall. Tall, looming, unnatural. Rowan grabbed Myers' arm and slammed the audio room door shut, locking it. The pounding that followed was slow, deliberate. Testing, Myers whispered, We're trapped. Rowan reached for the final 2 tapes, 5 and 6, stuffing them into his coat. He knew now. The fog woman didn't just haunt the cemetery ship. Followed anyone who heard Emily's voice. Anyone who answered the call. And Rowan had answered. The pounding stopped. Silence thickened. Then the voice came again. Samuel, the next call will be for you. Lights flickered back on. The hallway was empty, but the fog was seeping under the door. The fog pressed under the audio room door like a living thinkerling, searching, testing the cracks. Myers stood frozen in the corner, breath sharp and shallow, while Detective Samuel Rowan backed away, eyes locked on the widening mist. The fogwoman was no longer just a presence. She was inside the station. Myers, Rowan whispered, we need to move. Now, at the hallway, we're dead if we stay here. The fog thickened, whispering like distant voices carried on the wind. Rowan grabbed Myers by the elbow and pulled him toward the emergency exit at the back of the room. He shoved the door open. A wall of cold air slammed into them. The fog had filled the back stairwell too, coiling upward from the lower floors, like smoke escaping a burning building. But the fog here was thinner, less aware. Go, Rowan hissed. He pushed Myers ahead of him, down the stairs, feet clattering against metal steps. As they descended, the whispering behind them faded, but did not disappear. They burst out the bottom door into the alley. Rowan stopped. His breath caught. Fog rolled slowly across the pavement like tidal waves. Not natural fog, it moved with intention, rising and falling like something breathing beneath it. Myers grabbed Rowan's sleeve. Detective, what the hell is happening? Rowan didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the far end of the alley. A small shape stood there. A figure. A girl's silhouette. She was facing away from them. Hair hanging long and dark, her form outlined by the faint glow of a street lamp struggling against the mist. Myers whispered, Is that Emily? Rowan said quietly. The girl turned. Her eyes were hollow. Not empty, but filled with a soft glow, like light trapped behind glass. She lifted one hand slowly, not reaching toward Rowan, pointing behind him. Rowan's body tint. He turned. The fog at the mouth of the alley was rising, forming a shape. Tall, bent, dripping mist from its fingers. The woman in the fog. Her outline flickered, like a faulty reflection in a broken mirror. Rowan grabbed Myers. Run. They sprinted toward the street. Emily's figure vanished like smoke, but her voice echoed faintly, carried on the fog. She's watching. They reached Rowan's car. He shoved Myers in and slammed the driver's door. The engine sputtered once, twice, then roared. To life. Before Rowan sped off, he glanced in the rearview mirror. The fog woman stood at the end of the alley, head tilted to an impossible angle. Watching them leave, they didn't stop driving until they reached the outskirts of Leith, far from the thickest fog. Rowan pulled into an empty car park near the docks, his hands shaking as he finally cut the engine. Myers leaned back, staring at the roof. I don't get it, Rowan. Why us? Why the station? Why can she? Because I answered the call, Rowan muttered. Myers blinked. What call? Rowan rubbed his forehead. The disconnected emergency line. It rang 3 nights ago. Emily's voice, asking for help. Myers stared. You're telling me? The dead girl spoke to you? Rowan didn't answer. That was enough. Myers swore softly, sinking deeper into the seat. What now? You think she's going to stop? After this, Rowan shook his head slowly. No. He reached into his coat, pulling out the remaining cassette tape 6. He hadn't played it yet. Tape 5 had ended with static, as if the recorder had been knocked from the table. Tape 6 was marked differently. Not in the detective's handwriting, but in the mother's, scrawled in frantic ink, for the one who hears her. Rowan's throat tightened. He pulled out his old tape recorder from the glove box. The device hummed weakly as he inserted the tape. Static. A faint whimper. Then Emily's mother's voice, trembling. If someone, anyone, hears this, her? Breath hitched. You must know. She doesn't want Emily. She never did. Rowan frowned. She wants the one who hears her call. Myers whispered a curse under his breath. She uses the child as bait, the mother continued. Emily wasn't taken because she answered. She was taken because I did. Because I listened to the whispers. Rowan's grip tightened on the recorder. When she calls you, the mother said, voice cracking, you think you're helping? The lost. But you're helping her find you. Rowan's heart hammered. She is older than the cemetery, the mother warned. Older than the city. A widow of the fog. A creature who steals voices and drags the living with her into the mist. Myers swallowed. So she wants me? Rohan finished quietly. The tape crackled again. The mother's voice dropped to a whisper. She took Emily because she knew I would follow. She will take you because she knows you will, too. Static swallowed the rest. Then a sound. A second voice. Soft, childlike. Emily. Detective Rowan. The little voice whispered. Don't let her catch you. Rowan froze. The tape clicked and stopped. Silence filled the car. Myers finally exhaled. What now? Rowan stared through the windshield at the thin band of fog curling under the street lamps in the distance. She's not hunting random people, he murmured. She's hunting connections. Anyone who hears Emily becomes a thread she can follow. Myers frowned. You mean like a trail? Rowan nodded. And Emily's trying to warn me. Myers shuddered. Detective? I'm not going back to that station. I'm not going anywhere near fog for the rest of my life. Rowan didn't blame him. But Rowan knew something Myers didn't. He opened the glove box and pulled out an item. Wrapped in cloth. Emily's drawing. The one from the abandoned house. The one where the woman stood behind her in the cemetery. Rowan turned it over. There was writing on the back. He hadn't noticed before. Faint, barely visible. A shaky sentence. In a child's handwriting. She lives where the fog sleeps. Myers leaned closer. What does that even mean? Rowan stared at the words. And something clicked. The cemetery? The low ground? The old marsh beneath it, and Margaret's wasn't just a burial site. It used to be the thickest fog basin in the region. I know where she is, Rowan whispered. He reached for the keys. Myers grabbed his arm. You're going back there. After everything we've seen, everything on those tapes, you want to walk into her home. Rowan looked at him. Emily's still reaching out. She wants something, and I think I know what. Myers shook his head. This is insane. Rohan started the engine. No, he said quietly. Insane was answering the call. This is finishing it. As they pulled away from the docks, Rowan glimpsed movement in the fog drifting from the water. A pale hand reaching upward, then vanishing. Beneath the mist, Myers didn't see it. Rowan did, and he knew the fog woman was waiting. Fog spread across the graveyard like a white ocean, rolling over headstones that leaned like tired shoulders beneath the old oaks. St. Margaret's cemetery was always quiet at night, but tonight the silence felt alive. Watching, waiting. Detective Samuel Rowan stepped through the gates with a slow, steady breath. He had returned to where everything began. The tapes, the voice, the Harrow house, the woman in the fog, and Emily. Beside him, Officer Myers shivered beneath his coat. We shouldn't be here, he whispered. I can feel it, like the air is listening. Rowan didn't look at him. His eyes were fixed on the center of the graveyard, the oldest section, where the fog clung thickest. That's the point, Rowan said softly. She wants me here. They walked carefully between the gravestones, each step muffled by the damp earth. The fog was heavier now, darker somehow, gathering low to the ground like it was guarding something. Myers spoke again, voice trembling. Detective, what did Emily mean? Where the fog sleeps? Rowan scanned the cemetery until his eyes caught the faint silhouette of a stone building near the Bagsmall. Square, half collapsed. The crypt, Rowan said. Oldest place in the grounds. Myers swallowed. You think she's in there? Rowan nodded once. If she ever slept anywhere, it would be here. They approached slowly. The fog grew so thick Rowan could barely see his own feet. Something moved at the edge. A vision, a shadow gliding, shifting, always just far enough away to make him doubt whether it had been there at all. Then a whisper drifted through the mist. Samuel. Myers tensed. She knows we're here. Rowan's hand tightened around his flashlight, knuckles whitening. The whisper slid through the trees like a breath against the skin. Come closer. Closer. The crypt door stood before them, half open, darkness dripping from the gap like ink. Rowan stepped inside. The air changed instantly. The fog didn't enter, held at the doorway as if bowing to something deeper, older, already inside. The interior was cold. Stone walls etched with names half erased by time. In the very center of the room was a slab of cracked marble, a coffin-shaped structure covered in centuries of dust. Rowan approached. Something moved behind him. He turned sharply, but saw nothing. Then a second whisper. Softer. Closer. Detective. This voice was different. Young. Fragile. Emily. Rowan turned on the flashlight and swept the beam across the crypt. And there she was. The girl from the grainy photographs. The girl who had called him from the dead. Emily Harrow. She stood in the far corner, barely illuminated by the trembling light. Her white dress hung torn and dirt-stained, and her eyes glowed with a soft, fading light, like candle flames fighting against the wind. Emily, Rowan breathed. She stepped forward. Her voice was thin, like a distant echo. You shouldn't have come. She's close. Help me understand, Rowan said gently. Why did she'll take you? Why call me? Emily shook her head, hair swaying like it hung underwater. I didn't call. She used my voice. She uses all our voices. Rowan felt the blood drain from his face. All? Emily raised a trembling hand and pointed behind him. Rowan turned. The fog poured into the crypt. Not drifting, but crawling. Alive, it gathered in the doorway, forming a tall, slender silhouette. Long arms, bent head, fingers tapering into mist. The woman in the fog. Myers stumbled back. Oh God. Rowan stepped forward, placing himself between the creature and Emily. The fog woman tilted her head with a sharp crack. Her limbs jerked unnaturally, like a puppet pulled by unseen strings. When she spoke, the voice was layered, like dozens of voices speaking at once. "Samuel Rowan, you answered my call." The crypt trembled. Her form lurched closer. Rowan drew a breath. "What do you want?" The fog woman stretched out one long arm. Mist dripped from her fingers like cold rain. "You!" Emily cried out. "Don't listen!" "She feeds on answers." The creature paused, then snapped its attention toward the girl. Rowan didn't think he moved. He grabbed Emily's wrist and pulled her behind him. The fog woman's shape twisted with rage, the temperature dropping so fast frost formed on the stone walls. She lunged. Myers shouted, "Rowan, move!" The creature's hand slammed the marble slab, cracking the stone. Dust exploded across the crypt. Rowan shielded Emily, coughing, barely able to see. The fog woman rose again, taller now, head bending so far backward it almost touched her spine. Her many-layered voice filled the crypt. "She belongs to the fog. You belong to me." Emily clutched Rowan's arm. "Don't answer her." Rowan stepped forward instead. "I know what you are," he said. "You didn't just take her. You took everyone who ever answered." The creature froze. Rowan continued. "You lure them with voices of the dead." Silence. Then the fog woman leaned down, face inches from Rowan's. Except she had no face, just swirling mist forming the faint suggestion of hollow eyes. "We keep what is lost." Rowan shook his head. Emily wasn't lost. She was taken. The creature recoiled like the words burned. Emily whispered, "Detective, she can't stand the truth." Rowan understood. The fog woman fed on confusion, fear, and obedience, not truth. He stepped closer, voice steady. "You kill children. You steal voices. You drag the living into the dark. You're a parasite, not a keeper." The crypt shook violently. The fog woman shrieked, a high cracking, bone-splitting wail. The fog convulsed, rippling, pulling back, as if struck. Emily's glow brightened. Rowan realized Emily's presence weakened the creature. She wasn't its servant. She was its anchor. "Emily," Rowan whispered, "you can stop her." The girl looked terrified. "I'm not strong enough." "You are," Rowan said. "Why do you think she used your voice? You still have power." Emily stared at him, then nodded. She stepped forward, lifting a small trembling hand toward the creature. The fog woman recoiled, screeching. Emily whispered, "Let me go." The fog split like torn fabric. Light burst through Emily's chest, soft, warm, growing brighter. The fog woman thrashed, limbs bending grotesquely. Emily spoke again, stronger now. "I don't belong to you." The creature dissolved into frantic mist, cracking stone, shattering air. A scream like the wind being torn apart. Then dash light, blinding white light erupted through the crypt, filling every corner. The fog evaporated. The cold lifted. The darkness collapsed into itself like a dying flame, and Emily began to fade. Rowan stepped toward her. "Emily waits." She gave him a small, soft smile. "Thank you, detective." Her form shimmered, glowed, and finally dissolved into gentle light that drifted upward, disappearing through the cracks in the ceiling. Silence fell. Real silence. Myers collapsed against the wall, shaking. "Rowan, what just happened?" Rowan didn't answer. He looked at the air where Emily had stood, then at the empty darkness where the fog woman had died. The cemetery outside was clear. No fog, no whispers, nothing waiting in the shadows. For the first time since 1979, St. Margaret's Cemetery slept peacefully. Rowan breathed out, slow and heavy. "It's over," he said, but deep in his mind, he wondered who answered the call before him. and how many voices still echo in the fog that once slept beneath the city. Thank you for watching Haunted Graves After Dark. If you have questions or theories, leave them in the comments. And subscribe for more stories that linger long after the night ends.